It's 10:30. I'd like to welcome everybody along to the Planning Applications Committee at the 14th of February. I think that date rings a bell about something. 10:30. So could I ask that all mobile phones are switched off, and could we, and the meeting may be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. Could you read out the Sederunt, please, Lucy?
Good morning, everyone. We have 17 members present. We are quorate, and so far I have apologies from Councillor Diggle, Councillor Groom and Councillor Ogilvie. Councillor Ian Crothers is not present but may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you, Lucy. Have we got any declarations of interest? No. We confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Alistair.
Sorry, sir. It's a process question before we start. It's in relation to item number 10, Chair. Notice, and in fact, colleagues have commented as well, that this is in the part of the agenda where the applicant or his agent are not allowed to speak. Can I have the reasons for that, Chair? Because it seems to me that it can be argued that the refusal to allow the applicant or his agent, to be present to speak, and more importantly to answer members' questions, is a contravention of natural justice.
Chair, the reason why item 10 is a non-speaking item is to be a speaking item you have to have actually had an objection to it. So because there is no representation against the application, then it's a non-speaking item.
Okay, Alistair.
It's a narrow point, but I take the point entirely that Mr. Sutty is making. But the blunt fact of the matter, sir, is that maybe it's something that we've got to look at, for the future. Because the blunt fact of the matter is that this applicant or his or her agent, are not being given the opportunity, as it were, to obviously. It has been called in because there are concerns, and I'm talking not about the substantives, I'm talking about the process. It's been called in presumably because there are concerns about various aspects of the application. And it would seem to me in these circumstances, Chair, that it would have been helpful to the committee in coming to a decision if in fact the applicant or his or her agent were able to attend and at the end of the day answer any questions that elected members might in fact wish to put to them. To me, that would help to inform the decision-making process. Do take the point that Mr. Sutty is making. I think it's one that we've got to consider, Chair, perhaps going forward as a council for the future. Grateful to you for your time, sir. Thank
you, Alistair. You've got to remember as well, we're one of the few councils that allow members of the public and that to speak at their meetings. Could you outline the procedures to be followed, please?
The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. Case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues, accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation. Applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application or, when appropriate, agree a recommendation to be made to full council, who will determine the application.
Thank you, Lucy. We go on to item 4 on the agenda, the land to the north of the old toll bar at Gretna, 15/B/4/0232, and we've got Andrew Robinson speaking on this one. So whenever you're ready, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, the application seeking the approval of matters specified in conditions attached to an approval of planning permission in principle for the erection of a supermarket, formation of vehicular access and associated works. The application site is situated on part rough grassland, part caravan and camping site, which is located between the Gretna Gateway outlet village and the old toll bar. This slide shows the site outlined in red, just on the eastern side of the B7076 as you approach Gretna. The applicant's land ownership is identified in blue as well. So this is the northern part of the site looking from the road. So this is actually the area where the proposed supermarket building would be. Looking to the southeast, so you'd be looking here across what's proposed to be a car parking area, the slides of which will be shown in a bit of what's being proposed. This is at the southern part of the site, which is where the proposed access road would be, and you've got the old toll bar, which is to the right of this photograph. And this is looking north across the site, so you've got the caravan pitching site in the foreground, and the rough grassland beyond the trees, and then beyond that you've got the Gretna Gateway buildings. And then this is looking across the site, the northern part of the site. You actually, the proposed supermarket building would be sat in front of what is the buildings on the Gretna Gateway site. And finally, for the photographs, this is where the proposed access road would be, and you've also got the existing access to the old toll bar building, which is just shown there. So in terms of what's proposed, this is actually the indicative site layout that was submitted with the then outline planning application at the time in 2008. So the location of the supermarket building, the car parking area, was indicative, but the access was actually approved as part of this application. So the details of the access, you can see just at the bottom there, that those details were actually approved as part of this planning application, and the details of that have been taken forward into this application that's before you today. So this is the proposed site plan. So there's been a slight change in the siting of the building, which is actually proposed in the northern part of the site, on the left there of the screen, closer to the footpath. And you've got the car parking area proposed in front, and the access road as well, as per the previous slide. One thing that has been omitted, there was previously proposed to be a petrol station in the site. This has not been included in this site plan. These are proposed elevations of the building. So it's probably it's described as a non-typical supermarket design. It's gone for a vernacular feel with a contemporary edge, which was part of what was agreed at the outline application stage. These are the proposed site sections, and what's included is finished floor levels of 8.62 metres, which are required to satisfy flood requirements. There's a proposed landscaping scheme which shows tree and shrub planting around site. The illustration at the bottom is showing what would be appeared from the road elevation, with tree and shrub planting along. And there's proposed measures for surface water management, which effectively is for permeable parking bays, and there's a drainage connection at the back of the site as well. So after assessing the application, officers consider that that the details submitted with this are acceptable, and the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions in the report.
Thank you, Andrew. Members, points of clarification? Patsy?
Yes, it's just something Andrew said about
I'm presuming the applicants just decided not to pursue with the petrol station that they've got approval for. So it was part of the previous approval. So they had permission for a petrol station. They've just decided not to include it in the final site layout. So they've omitted it from the proposal.
but it's in here as we're approving it, if you like, because it's part of the it's part of the headline. So does that have to come out of that in order that we're not approving it because it's not in front of us? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, the descriptions actually, that was the description of what was given to the planning permission in principle application. So the title that's at the top of there that's what the application was for. That's what they had approval for. But the actual details which have been submitted, which will form the approved plans if the application is to be approved, is actually what matters. So that description is what the previous permission was granted for, which stands. That permission is there, but they've just decided not to include that.
Archie?
So thanks very much, Chair. And on that particular point, that should be put into the recommendation somehow, that filling station is not part of this plan. But can I come back to the consultations and Gretna and Rig Community Council? And I see you've got a note there that comments raised by the Community Council relate to concerns regarding the principle of the development, which has already been determined. And I see no sort of planning reason as to why this application shouldn't go forward with the recommendation that the petrol station isn't involved. However, I look at 4.2 on page 12, and when determining application, the council is required to consider the overall aims, and there's 3 bullet points: be a viable rural economy, have vibrant towns and villages. And the Community Council raised some valid points in that, since the original plan application, there's been a further Class 1 put in Gretna. The centre of Gretna, which is we as a council have spent a lot of money on actually improving that particular area, and the south car park for the gateway, of course, is just across the road. So what I wanted to know is, have those points been communicated with, Gretna and Rig Community Council to ensure that they understand why their concerns haven't been addressed in this particular application?
I actually did have the Community Council on the phone the other day about another application in Gretna, and I did explain what this application was for, and they seem to understand that this application that's before you today is just to approve the details of the previous application. If another application for planning permission in principle was to be submitted, i.e. if they didn't submit the details and the applicant decided to renew this permission, then the issues that you raised would have been material considerations to assess as part of that application. But because this application has been submitted to finalise details outstanding from the previously approved application, then that's all that's before you today. But I did make that clear to the Community Council.
Yeah.
Chair, the original PIP was based on a food store and petrol filling station. Is the removal of the petrol filling station a material factor, and therefore does it actually relate to the same application? I know it's in the same area, but should this be taken into consideration? Because if you've no petrol, you've got different flows of traffic, etc. So do the assessments stand up to what was there before? And should this be dealt with separately as a standalone application rather than being tied to the other one?
David?
It's always a matter of fact and degree in these things. If you're making something more onerous, then that would normally be regarded as a material change. So, for example, if you had permission for a supermarket on the site without a petrol filling station and you wanted to introduce that, that would be a different matter. But in the same way, if you get planning permission to build a house and a garage, and you decide not to build the garage, but you build the house, your planning permission will still say erection of house and garage, but the garage just never has been built. This particular scheme here, I'm quite comfortable that I understand, because I first read through the report and thought, where's the petrol station? So I completely understand members' position on this. But if they have chosen not to include it, and they in fact have got a layout which is compatible, they're mutually exclusive. They now couldn't implement the petrol filling station, but it's just something they've decided not to do, rather than something they want to add in.
Thank you, David. Alistair Witts.
Thank you, Chair. I note amongst the consultees we do not have the council archaeologist, and I wondered if this would be significant, given that in this locality in 1542 there was the Battle of the Sark, which unfortunately Scotland lost due to bad generalship. But should the council archaeologist not have been consulted?
Andrew.
No, I can check in the notes to see whether they were consulted on the previous application, which I presume they were, but this isn't seeking permission for the principle of the development, the archaeological issues. There's no archaeological issues on the site, or were highlighted when the application was approved in 2012, so it was seen not necessary to consult the archaeologist.
David.
There is, in fact, in Gretna now, a historic battlefield has been declared for the Battle of Sark, but it doesn't, as far as I'm aware, impinge on this particular site. It's further over to the west.
Ian.
No, I'm fine, thanks, Chair. Point's been covered.
Jane. Ian.
Thanks, Chairman. So, see, we've seen some, considering what we've got up in front of us here in regards to description, which includes a petrol filling station, but we did see some plans earlier. So if this gets agreed today, are we agreeing the plans as without the actual petrol station being there? Just as a point of clarity for myself.
Yes, maybe Andrew can put the slide up. What you are considering today is the one without the petrol filling station, which maybe lent to confusion by showing you the original one, but that's what's before you today. There's a supermarket and parking space, loading area at the eastern side of the main building, but that's it. There is no petrol filling station as part of this proposal.
Archie.
Because, I mean, as Ivor has already said, it's a petrol filling station, and actually in the heading of the application, I mean, are we taking that out of the heading? Are we taking it out of the plan application? Or do we just say as a recommendation, as part of the recommendations, that no filling station is part of that?
David.
The complication, as Andrew's explained, is that this is what's actually called an approval of matters specified by condition. So it's not a planning application. It is tying in with the previous planning permission principal application, which was for erection of Class 1 food store and petrol filling station. If it makes members put their minds at rest, shall we say, we could happily put on either a condition or a directive saying, for the avoidance of doubt, no petrol filling station forms part of this approval.
I'll be happy with that, Chair.
Ian.
Same point. I thought we were actually agreeing to that particular plan, but if that's not the exact plan, that would have made it absolutely firm for me, and that's why I asked the question. But the wording that David's outlined would be content with that.
Gail.
Just one tiny point. Is there any pedestrian access between the store and the outlet village, or will people walk down the pavements if they want to connect between the two? Because it seems logical to me to have a pedestrian link between the two sites.
It would be via the footpath. If you go on the site, actually, if you follow the boundary around the northern part, is actually a designated core path, which is why, as part of the condition, we've requested details of the fence to avoid a high fence being put along there. But there isn't actually a natural access point, because actually on the other side of there is a service yard area. So actually it would probably make more sense to go out via the footpath and then into which is the natural flow.
Right. We've got no other members. We've got no further speakers. So members are now in session. Archie.
Chair, I would go with the recommendations and that condition that the petrol station is not involved in the full application that come before us.
Alistair.
I would second that, sir.
Anybody otherwise minded? Nope. Agreed.
And members have agreed to approve the application subject to conditions, and also, in addition, the recommendation that no petrol station will form part of the application.
Could we go item 5 on the agenda, Woodholm, Keswick Drive, Southerness, 16/1286/FUL, and we've got Claire Eckstein speaking on this one. Just whenever you're ready, Claire.
Okay, the application is for planning permission for the erection of a dwelling house and change of use of the existing dwelling house to form a private studio. The application site is at Woodholm, which lies adjacent to the foreshore at Southerness on the eastern side, and it's marked up the red arrow here. Woodholm itself is accessed off a private access driveway, which is off Keswick Drive, Southerness. This aerial photograph shows the house to the south, which is Tamavua, and that also shows the northeast extension, which wasn't originally submitted, or noted on the plans, but I'm just showing this aerial photograph to show the relationship. And this plan is, the block plan is the one that was submitted, and then the plan on the left-hand side is one that I've prepared showing Tamavua extension and the position of the proposed dwelling house. So this is the new dwelling house. It's based on a curved roof design with a conservatory and glazed area, which will face on the northern side, which will actually face towards the existing house, Woodholm, which is being converted to a studio. And this shows the site sections with Woodholm, then the proposed dwelling, and then Tamavua. So this is the actual application site. You see Woodholm is the building in the centre, the entrance where the car's parked. And then obviously swinging just slightly to the right with the car at the access, and then the existing property, Kingarth, to the left. And this is showing Tamavua, then Woodholm, and the actual proposed dwelling house will be in between those, in the centre of that photograph. So this is showing the site from the roadway with Tamavua with its flat roof extension, the boundary hedge, the proposed site for the new house, and then obviously Woodholm, which has been converted to a dwelling house. To a studio, sorry. So again, the boundary site for the new house, and then Woodholm. This is looking backwards across the site from the northeasterly direction. So the proposed new house would be sitting just basically in the centre of the photograph. And then this is one a bit further back, showing the relationship to Woodholm and Tamavua. And this is the final one of actual Woodholm itself, which is to become a studio. A full assessment of the proposal is set out in the committee report, but the main issues were the principle of the development and the siting and design and impact on amenity. The site is for a new dwelling house on a plot over 2,000 square metres and will replace an existing house which has been retained but changed to a private studio. So there remains in total one single dwelling house on the plot. The site is within the village of Southerness, so as a replacement dwelling house and an infill plot, which is large, cannot be considered as an overdevelopment and is in keeping with the area. The other key issue relates to the siting and design of the house. As noted in paragraph 4.4 of the report, a more contemporary design approach is proposed with the curved roof design. And whilst it's recognised, and this being a slightly unconventional design approach, but it is recognised that Southerness has a diverse range of building styles and designs, that the design approach is not considered to be unacceptably out of keeping with the area, that it is recommended for approval. There are other issues regarding overlooking and privacy, but due to the orientation and position of the new dwelling house, it minimises these issues, and combined with the additional conditions regarding permitted development rights and boundary treatments, these address the concerns. In conclusion, therefore, the proposal is considered to be compliant with the policies and recommended for approval, subject to conditions noted in the report.
Thank you, Claire. Members, points of clarification? None? Patsy?
Just one, it's on the design of the new house, which I notice at 4.4 is described as random and uncoordinated pattern. We don't have anything in front of us with regards to the design of the new house, except for that sort of paragraph, really, which, are you quite happy that it will fit in with the rest of the village?
Well, what I'm saying is that it's a slightly unconventional, unusual design, but within the context of Southerness, which, as probably members will recognise, is a mixture of range of house styles, types, then something of this slightly unusual alternative design approach, I don't think can be considered as unacceptable.
Yep. As I say, if we have no objectors, could we have Paul and Linda Hadfield, the applicants, please? Oh, ready in place. Paul and Linda, you've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go. Just whenever you're ready.
Just a quick declaration. It's my husband and I were taken back by the 10 objectors, particularly as we'd informed our immediate neighbours of our intentions during conversations over the summer months, what we had overall planned to do. As our conflict is, our door was always open and the kettle was always on. We've tried very hard to address privacy issues between Woodholm and our immediate neighbours. We did originally have the house as a holiday let, but there were issues with our guests who had commented on several occasions that feeling very overlooked. As to the studio, I am in truth an Institute of Conservation accredited stained glass conservator. The private studio will not be a glass factory. I am an artist who's working alone, who paints with glass and looks forward to producing exhibition work while interacting with Dumfries and Galloway's art community. As we'd said previously, all we can say is any problems that neighbours might have, our door's always open and the kettle is always on in the Lancastrian way for any debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members? Patsy?
So just for clarification, your studio is purely for working in, it's not actually going to be a shop or a retail place?
No. Conservation studios aren't, as a general rule. I am engaged at the moment in working in the replacement. I'm on several diocesan advisory committees, and we've got an issue with rehousing of glass from redundant churches, and that is principally one of the things I've got pretty much involved in. It just means the reconfiguring of an altar window on a historic and then the replacing of such, and that's really where my main interests lie. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members? Nope. Thank you very much. You may return to your seats. Members, we're now in session. Archie?
Thanks, Chair. Again, going through the reports and the recommendations, I see no reason why not to approve this application as considered in the report.
Yeah. Patsy? Right. Ivor?
Chair, could you expand, possibly the planning officer, what could be deemed incidental to the enjoyment of the new dwelling house as a studio? Because could having maybe, if we allow it, rather than being just an artist studio, could it be something else whereby you could either have people staying in it as a granny flat, or could it be maybe a pub in the future? What does incidental to the enjoyment of the house mean? And it won't be residential as in somebody staying there on temporary or permanent basis.
David?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, condition 6, which is on page 25, sets out the terms that we would expect for this. It's always, again, to use the phrase, a matter of fact and degree, the same way that if somebody is working from home, it is their house and it's also their place of work, but it is not open to members of the public. So there's no material change of use there. If somebody, for example, is running a chiropractor's practice from a house and you're encouraging people to come into that area, then that's where it trips it. In this case here, clearly, if the main building, the new house, is the residence of the applicants and Mrs. Hadfield was to be using that studio as her place of work to do the conservation, then again, that's incidental to the use of the predominant use, which is the dwelling house. If it were then to become, as I think one of the questions there alluded to, was as a shop and you're encouraging the public to go into that area as a retail function, that's clearly material change of use. The note at the bottom of condition 6 makes it absolutely clear that there's one dwelling house, so it could not be used as two dwelling houses on the one site without a further grant of planning permission.
Thank you. Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. I understand the rationale behind developer contributions in terms of 2.3. However, I thought that this would be in terms of a new build. Now, it is a new build, but it's a replacement build because the existing house is to become a studio. So how do we justify a developer contribution in this instance?
Yeah.
It is a new house, but there's not any additional houses because you're effectively extinguishing the existing use. So it's a net sum game.
Thank you.
That's my point entirely. There's no additional population.
Right, got a proposal.
No, it's just, I'd like to ask a question about the siting of the actual building where we're talking about overlooking and that sort of thing. And I know we have minimum measurements for window to window distance, but given the size of this site, was siting further from the boundary ever considered by the planners and the applicant?
Claire.
I didn't ask for an amendment because I felt it was sort of acceptable given the position of the dwelling house on the site, the new dwelling house. So that wasn't something I asked for, and that's what was submitted in front of me. So I'm unable to answer the question as to why the applicant decided to put it in that position. That's not something I can't think,
no,
but that was what put
it wasn't
to
so
me.
much why they put it in that position as could or should we have asked for it to be moved further over? The planners at their discussion stage, so that I think the issue is they've got balconies on the first floor and that'll overlook the houses at either side. Should we have, based on that, should we have looked at or considered asking them to move closer to the centre of the site?
Good.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, the applicant is entitled to submit any application they so wish. If it was contrary to policy, was causing an obvious difficulty, then yes, we would have asked for it. As Claire said, it basically complied with all our policies and therefore there was no requirement for us to go back and ask for any amendments.
Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Just looking for clarification on condition 6. Does condition 6 preclude entirely any future residential use of the studio?
David.
As a freestanding dwelling house, yes, you would need a further planning application for that.
Thank you. We've got a proposal to accept this. It's been seconded. Is anyone otherwise minded agreed? Right. Thank you. Let's see.
And in relation to item 5, members have agreed to approve subject to conditions as per the report.
Item 6 on the agenda, 31A St Cuthberts Street, Kirkcudbright, planning application for the erection of a storage shed, 16/B/2/0-185. And we've got Jessica Taylor speaking in this one. So now we're ready, Jessica.
So this application is for the erection of a wooden storage shed to replace an existing unauthorised structure which is constructed of profile metal sheeting. So the application site is part of a detached garden to the rear of St Cuthberts Street. The detached garden is one of several units belonging to the residents of St Cuthberts Street. The site is enclosed by properties on the St Cuthberts Street, Milburn Street, Gladstone Place and St Mary's Street. Now this shows the location of the proposed building. It's located approximately 1 metre from the boundary of the rear of number 43 to 47 St Cuthberts Street. And this is showing you the floor plan of the building, which is approximately 5 metres by 3.5 metres. And this is showing the proposed elevations. So it's constructed of wooden walls under a slate roof, and it'll be appearance and height of a garage. So it's 2.8 metres in height. Run through some of the site photographs. So this is looking from St Cuthberts Street. The entrance to the rear gardens is in the door just to the left of the fascia sign for the takeaway. And this is showing the narrowness of the access to the application site and to the other plots. So this is then it's showing the access onto the backland area. And this is showing the site with the currently unauthorised structure just behind the fence in the middle of the photo. And then the next few photos are just showing you the character of the garden. So there is a mixture of structures in the rear curtilages of the property. So this is looking directly at the site. So it's showing the existing shed. And this is showing the existing shed and the open side. The proposed one is enclosed. The representations did make mention to rubble and things being dumped on the site. This actually is within the site. This is showing the boundary with the properties at the rear of St Cuthberts Street, so the existing hedge. And again, this is more just to say the representations. This is outside of the application site, so this is in somebody else's. And the application is recommended for approval, subject to a condition to ensure that the unauthorised shed is removed prior to the new unit being brought into use.
Thanks, Jessica. Members, points of clarification? Davy?
Is there going to be an archaeological dig there first before I start moving the shed or anything?
Well, my garden was when I bought it. Hadn't been touched for 15 months, Davy. It's clear now, like. But, Jim? No.
I think rather than archaeologists should send the council's wildlife officer in there, might discover some new species.
Right, all the hilarity buying anything sensible. Jane?
Just a point of clarification. What was you showed us up there said natural slate. The papers talk about grey felt roof tiles. This is a wooden building.
Jessica?
And I'd also like, if I could, to ask about the heights as well, to be absolutely clear that the height proposed is less than that is there now.
Jessica?
What we're approving is the plan, so it is a slate roof. In terms of the height, it measures 2.8 metres to the highest point.
Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just ask for a comment on the material grounds for objection? Scale appearance of the proposed building are inappropriate in a conservation area would the proposed development not actually improve the site? Secondly, I can't quite understand why building materials, having been dumped on the site as a material objection, would that not be resolved by the removal of them? And finally, is the privacy issue any different if the development goes ahead compared to what it is at the moment?
Apologies, Chair. I've just looked at the slides and the case officer had put in he's now on holiday, which is why Jessica's here, but the photos that we showed you there were the original submitted scheme, which was a slate roof. It is actually felt tiles because they amended it to be much smaller. So for the avoidance of doubt, what is actually being considered, and sorry, I don't have the photos of it here, that's what's set out in paragraph 1.7. So it has reduced in size from the one that you saw on the slide there. So it's gone down from this 6.8 to 5 metres, and 4.3 has gone down to 3.5 metres, and its ridge height would be 2.8 as opposed to the one on the slide, which was 4.2. So it has come down basically to the size of a single domestic garage.
Thank you for that clarification. That is fine.
Okay. Can you remember?
No,
Ian?
I'm sorry.
Ian.
Just the material objections, I just wanted clarification on. Scale, appearance and proposed building, it states as are inappropriate in a conservation area. Would this proposal not be an improvement in that conservation area? The second thing was building materials dumped on the site. Is that not just a case of removal? And finally, is the loss of privacy any different with the new development given the scales reducing compared to what is existing at the moment? Would all those things be addressed?
Jessica?
Yeah, it's considered that the proposed building will improve the situation of the current or authorised building in terms of the amenities of the area. It is quite a screen site, and you can't see it from any public vantage points because of the properties. But it is considered to be an improvement on what is there now. In terms of the dumping of the materials, it's considered it will, because it's going to be an enclosed unit, and they'll be able to put the materials into the unit rather than having them outside, so it should again improve the amenity of the area. And in terms of representations, it's not going to be a habitable building, so it's not considered that the amenity of the neighbouring properties will be affected. Again, with the current building being open-sided and the proposed one being enclosed, it should reduce the impact.
Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at 1.6, page 30, where it indicates the applicant is seeking to remove the existing unauthorised shed. When I'm reading that, I'm thinking more along the lines of, irrespective of the outcome of this application, the applicant would be required to remove the existing unauthorised shed, and is actually seeking it with, to put an application for an approved shed. Obviously, the material change to the details for 1.7 maybe make the proposed shed more in keeping and within the sort of dimensions that might be appropriate. But are we maybe being a wee bit soft there by just presenting that as the applicant is seeking to remove the existing under? Are they going to have to remove it anyway, is the question.
Yes, we are going down the enforcement route, which is how this application came about. But it's the condition 1, which says that the storage shed hereby granted permission shall not be brought into use unless the existing unauthorised shed and its construction materials have been removed. So we are put a condition on to make sure that it is removed.
Andy?
Thanks. Just a bit of clarification, Chair. At 3.2, the second bullet point, I think it's this old hot potato. Where do we measure for the neighbours who need to be notified? Is it 20 metres from the nearest part of their property to 20 metres of the nearest part of the application site? Or how do we actually measure that? Because it seems to be a wee bit difference in different applications in this.
It's measured 20 metres from the red line. So if an applicant puts the red line very tightly round their application site, it's just measured from there. some applications are submitted with the red line that goes around the whole boundary. So it's 20 metres from the red line that is submitted by the applicant.
Thank you. As we've got no further points of clarification, and we've got no objectors, we've not got the applicant. Members, we're now in session.
And in relation to item 6, members have agreed to approve subject to conditions.
Thank you. We're on to item 7, the former Heathhall Airfield, Heathhall, Dumfries. Planning application for the erection of an industrial building containing 6 units, 16/B/3/0249. And we've got Mary Mitchell speaking in this one. Whenever you're ready, Mary.
Good morning. The application site is on an allocated business and industry site. There are 2 established business and industry sites either side of this site and an area of housing to the north, which you can see on these plans. This plan shows that the applicant owns or is in control of much of the surrounding area. You can also see an L-shaped road there and a suds pond just to the north of the site. These features were approved under a separate application in 2013, and it's from this road that the site will gain vehicle access, and the site will also drain to that suds pond. Around the building is proposed car parking and HGV access. The building itself is proposed to provide flexible industrial starter units. The dimensions of the building are 28.5 metres in width and 49.5 metres in length, and its maximum height is 7.85 metres. This is a visualisation from the northwest corner of the site. This plan shows an application which was approved at last month's committee for a storage yard, porta cabin and palisade fencing. The site is very similar to the current site. The site photographs, the site is just behind the bushes in the centre of that picture. This is taken from the public road. This is the access where the new road, which was previously approved, will take from. The works have already commenced for the approved road access. The application site is just in the centre of this photograph. Behind this line of trees in the background are where the houses are, and the application site is just in the centre again of this photo. This is looking up towards the existing Heathhall industrial estate, and the application site's just to the left. This is looking north at the application site, and again the houses are to the right of that photograph behind the line of trees. The principle for the erection of an industrial building at this site is accepted under policy. The reason the application has come to the Applications Committee is that there have been 9 objections, mainly on the grounds that noise, light, air and odour pollution created on the site will have a detrimental impact on the nearby houses. A number of mitigation measures have been recommended in the report, conditions limiting acceptable noise levels on site, limiting operational hours and controlling the outdoor lighting. Additionally, landscaping and planting scheme was approved under the previous application for the road, which will provide screening between the houses and the application site. A condition linking to that is recommended in this report as well. The applicant has also made some amendments to the design. They removed 2 of the HGV access doors on the north elevation, and they are proposing insulated cladding materials. On the back of this mitigation, it is concluded that the general amenity of the area will be maintained, and the application is for approval.
Thank you, Mary. Member, points of clarification, Tom?
Can I just take you to the report itself, planning history 1.7. I'm assuming the very first one there, 15/3/3/0174, this is the one we approved in January this year. Because that confused me, because you got 2016 there instead of 2017 in that report.
It should say 17. On the 12th of the 1st, 17. Sorry, that's an error.
So it's the same site as we approved last month?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Just forgive me if I've missed it somewhere there. You mentioned restricted hours for noise levels. What are you suggesting in case I've missed it?
There are recommended conditions at the back of the report.
Number 12 is in noise.
It's really the hours, Chair.
Yeah, condition 11, that no operations, including vehicle movements, shall take place on the site out with the hours of 0730 hours to 1800 hours, Monday to Friday.
Where is it?
No.
No.
Chair, there is no, that was a draft. Basically, because the committee decided at the last month meeting, definitely 2017, not to have an hours of operation condition. Given this is ostensibly the same site, for consistency, we did not have an hours of operation condition on this. That was in an initial draft, but then when I discussed it with Robert Duncan, who dealt with the other application, for consistency, we deleted that. There is, however, because this is a general industrial use, condition 12, which covers noise. Now, the other application was for a storage yard, which in itself should not generate any actual noise, but condition 12 would be applicable for a general industrial use. As Mary says, the applicant has actually amended it to try and resolve the issues of the north elevation having an access, which would be the one closest to the residential property, so that's been amended. And insulated cladding would also be used to try and provide some mitigation. But sorry, for the avoidance of doubt, there is no recommended condition on hours of operation.
Ivor?
Chair, I was wondering if someone could expand on the use class 5. It says large variety of heavier industrial uses. What sort of things does that cover? Could it cover the storage of, I would say, waste materials as an option?
There are three general classes of what you might call business uses. The first one is class 4, which used to be called light industry, and that's just called business now. So that sort of thing which you could carry on within a residential area without adversely affecting the amenity. So these are lighter ones. All other forms of actual industrial activity fall within class 5, which is what's being proposed here. Storage and distribution falls within class 6. So if you're storing materials or acting as a distribution warehouse, that's class 6. But basically all other industrial activities fall within class 5, which is covered here.
Yeah. Any other members? Patsy?
It's just, I wasn't here last month, and so I don't really understand why there isn't any form of time restrictions as to when this can be used, if it can be used for heavy industry, really.
David?
And because it seems to be a concern for the people living nearby.
David?
Chair, if I could refer members to page 3 on your agenda, that sets out what happened last month with the application there, where it was a vote and the amendment was carried by 8 votes to 6 not to attach hours of operation conditions. Given that this is identified as an industrial site in the local development plan and has been identified for that purpose for many years now, it was seen to be unduly restrictive if there was going to be an hours of operation condition put on. However, with this one, whilst there's no hours of operation, we have got the condition 12 about the level of noise, which would help to mitigate that circumstance.
Thank you. We've got no other members and points of clarification. Could we have Ewan Gillespie here, please? Objector. And you've got 3 minutes, Ewan, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Good morning. I seek your wisdom as a planning committee members to take into account all parties that have an interest with this application. I appreciate this land has been designated for industrial development back in '93, before the houses had been built right up to the boundary. I thus ask you to take consideration of the following points which had been raised for this application and others nearby. There have also been restrictions made to haulage operators of nearby industrial buildings that we would like to be included in the conditions for this application to ensure that business has the same restrictions. We ask you that the restricted operation hours be considered. Despite the last month's application being approved without, we ask that it be a factor of this application. We feel that it would be reasonable that these units operate between hours of 7:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the evening, Monday to Friday, with a shorter operation on Saturday of 7:30 till 1 in the afternoon, and no Sunday operations. These are what would be accepted as normal operational hours, and I feel these should be imposed to protect nearby domestic properties, and also be in keeping with nearby businesses. The inclusion of noise limitation should take into account that the reversing bleeps on vehicles should be disabled at the site during construction and operation of these units, and all reversing on manoeuvres be carried out with the use of reversing cameras, which is presently being considered as a change in motoring law. That is also included in the haulage licence for nearby operating businesses at present. Also, some additional noise limitation barriers could be installed, whether it be beech hedges or earth mounds, which would also help to reflect and reduce noise away from existing domestic properties. We would also ask you to include some restriction for the storage and operation of these units, so that there can be no materials that would cause nuisance odours or be hazardous for the nearby residential properties. I appreciate that these types of buildings will encourage business growth in Heathhall, and I ask that these be kept in line with the existing type of businesses and designated by previous LDPs. The LDP back in '93 has since been modified and amended to benefit of industry and not taking into consideration housing developed since.
30 seconds to go, Ewan.
We had purchased our homes in Heathhall taking the '93 LDP into account, and I ask you today to help both the new units and existing homeowners to be able to be good neighbours by placing restrictions on them in line with the pre-mentioned points. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing your wisdom.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Ewan? Jane?
Yes, I'm just interested, and please, Mr. Gillespie, you talked about the difference between the LDP, or in those days the development plan, in 1993 and now, and I wonder if you could just explain to me what has happened in your mind.
Back in '93, they designated the area for businesses that would not be producing large quantities of noise. For example, vehicle maintenance bays were not allowed back then, but have then since been allowed. Other things where the storage of certain materials was not allowed. So it's just to clarify that what had been acceptable back then, or not acceptable, would still be unacceptable or acceptable now. What we don't want to have is what you're saying is Class 6 or Class 5 heavy industry working in a building which is very close to existing properties. When you take it into the college site, you've not approved houses there next to existing businesses, but you're willing to let new businesses start up which could produce significant noise levels, which you're hoping to restrict. right next to existing domestic properties. So how can you have the LDP for 93 changed to then allow businesses to make noise next to existing houses, but you can't allow new houses built to existing buildings which do produce noise? So the 93 LDP was restricting a lot of things are now being approved. I know I haven't clarified exactly what you're asking, but the 2016 LDP is very different to 93. It's such a huge document, you can't really ask a specific question unless you know that, what you're asking.
Thank you. All right, Jane.
Can I come back and ask the officer later on? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gillespie.
Okay. You come back later on, Jane.
Okay, thank you. Members, I'm seeking your consideration and support on 3 points. It is correct to state that the land for this proposal has been identified for business and industrial use since 1993. However, no significant industrial development has taken place on this land for 20 years, in contrast to the multi-phase housing development that has taken place in the last 20 years. And it now surrounds the entire northern border of this land. I submit that development should be in balance. It's also important to note that no planning objections have been raised to light business use of this land, and that 2 business schemes have recently gone ahead with no objections. I respectfully suggest to the committee that an informed planning process should take due professional diligence to consider that industrial schemes and residential schemes are not easy neighbours, and that planning should avoid this type of conflict. Point 2. If no objections have been received for business use, you may now wonder why I'm giving this presentation. The original description of the proposal was business startup units. But I'm concerned because the use is described as erection of industrial building containing 6 units, i.e. erecting a general industrial building for use class 5, which is the carrying out of industrial processes. The proposal has no detail to enable any judgments to be made about the impact of any industrial activity on the border of this large residential development. Is this a reasonable, fair, and community-minded approach? Point 3. In addition, the large size and design of this application, with its description of a flexible approach, could lead to a significant industrial process, such as a waste handling facility. Now, what safeguards are in place to control the potential change from 6 business startup units to an industrial process, such as a single waste management facility?
30 seconds to go, Ian.
Thank you. I sincerely hope the committee can understand the impact that unknown industrial processes could have on one of the largest residential developments in this area, and use their discretion to protect the Heathhall community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Members, any questions for Ian? Nope. You may take your seat, Ian.
Okay.
Could I have Andrew Clark, Susan Parry reading a prepared statement on behalf of Alan Parry. Sorry about that, Susan. And you've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Okay, I write to raise concerns that this application is manipulating the planning process through submitting multiple concurrent applications on the same plot. In plain speak, shaping future applications by chipping away bit by bit so that when the time comes, it's easier to get more controversial plans approved without needing to consult families or nearby neighbours, and therefore avoiding opposition. You'll recall only last month they were granted approval to develop a storage yard on the same site, and that planning application and the planning application for today both negate the development of the Suds Pond for the planning application for the road in 13. You, the council, have actively promoted the growth of Heathhall to the point where we now have a community of over 3,000 voters right up to the edge of this development site. As a community, we want and we welcome sustained economic growth, but not at any price. We welcome growth that would be a good neighbour and bring prosperity to the area, but not at the expense of the environment and the quality of our life. Through lack of transparency, the applicants have generated conflict instead of collaboration with the community, and this needn't be the case if you choose to approve only development that is appropriate to live alongside residential properties. Indeed, this application generates further conflict in that it is applied for as a Class 5 development when in fact the type of industry that would potentially be used in starter units would fall within Class 4 as described in the Town and Country Act for Scotland. We look to you, our elected representatives, to safeguard our community that you have helped to shape, and we invite you to ensure that any development must now and must remain compatible with our expanding residential community and not be at the expense of the families of Heathhall. And we would therefore ask that at this time, if this is to be granted, that you grant it with Class 4 business status and not Class 5 general industrial status. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. May I return to your seat. Andrew Clark and Alan Newbiggins, please, agent and applicant. You've also got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Chair, thank you. Andrew Clark of Robert Potter and Partners and Alan Newbiggin of Mall Plant as the applicant. This is an application as a facilitator for economic development on the site in a flexible approach which the applicant has had previous experience in delivering their successful Crosslinks building in Heathhall. I would commend the officer's report and would ask you to recommend approve the application, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Members, Archie.
Thanks very much. You've heard representations from objectors about this being containing 6 units with the view in their mind that this is going to go to one big industrial unit. Can you confirm or deny that's going to happen?
I can clarify that that's never been the intention and won't happen. This is not intended as a waste storage area or any reference to previous applications that were made and withdrawn for the larger site. This is intended as starter units, and it's a developer as Mall Plant who have had experience with that already in Heathhall, developing areas around Tinnelstown for successful businesses in an industrial estate.
Thank you. Ian.
Thank you. We heard Susan Parry saying that she felt that the class should be a Class 4 as opposed to a Class 5. Would a Class 4 affect the business proposal?
We would have greater level of flexibility with Class 5 ultimately being an industrial site which it's allocated for, but no, it wouldn't restrict it overly, to be honest. It's the types of businesses which are the nature of this building is not a heavy industrial building. It's not a manufacturing plant. It's clearly as flexible units for businesses. The types of businesses which will go into it will ultimately be more of a light industrial nature.
Thank you.
There was reference made to operational hours earlier on. I think it was Mr. Gillespie that mentioned it. Now, if you go for light or Class 5, you could actually end up with possible manufacturing, I would take, as in cutting steel. You could actually have an engineer in there, agricultural engineer, where you could be looking at hours going 9 o'clock at night if some machinery broke down, you're going in. Would the hours being limited to the ones suggested be a problem for you, or could that be incorporated within your proposal?
Thanks. The hours of working, we know what you're saying, but some of the inquiries we've had have been from actual office developments, from people from the town who want to come out to somewhere which is far more flexible parking, more modern type buildings. The danger would be to restrict them where they would maybe work till maybe 7 o'clock in an office, work early, whatever. We maybe have a problem with that. We've had a couple of inquiries from the town.
Thank you. Ian?
No, I'm fine. The question's been answered.
Fine. Davy?
Right, thanks, Chair. There was mention made of the Suds pond that's going to be located there. Is there still need for that based on what you're proposing for this site?
Yes, that's part of the overall development of the entire site, and that's required. That has to be implemented, as does the landscaping as part of that as well.
See?
My question has been asked.
Yeah. Got no other questions? Right, may return to your seats. Could we, all right, members, we're now in session. Dom.
Thanks, Chairman. My view hasn't changed from the application last month. It's exactly the same site, not much different in terms of an application. I don't have a problem granting it. However, I would want to put a restriction on regarding the opening hours. I think the point was well made at the last meeting, and I think it's been made again today. So I've no problem with the present recommendations, but I've got an extra recommendation in there regarding opening hours, Monday to Friday, plus Saturday, Sunday.
Thank you. Like Councillor McCaughey, I feel I wouldn't change my decision from January. I think there should be a restriction on opening hours. What I would like to do is ask David about how could it be reduced from a Class 5 to Class 4? Would that be appropriate?
The application before us is for Class 5. Once a Class 5 use has been implemented, there are what are called permitted development rights to move between use classes, so you can go from a Class 5 to the less onerous Class 4 without requiring a grant of planning permission. So yes, if provided it was implemented first as Class 5, you can't go in and do a different use to what you've got permission for, but if it was implemented, it could then become an office or some other Class 4 use without needing to apply. But it can't go the other way. So if you get permission for a Class 4 business use, you cannot use it for any other onerous use without permission.
Yeah, you want to come back?
Yes, please. Thank you for that. That explains after the permission was granted. Is it possible for us today to grant Class 4 use as opposed to Class 5?
Yeah.
No, because that's not what they've applied for, I'm afraid.
Chair, can you put a condition on whereby you could limit the hours with regard to Class 5 use, but if it was to go to a Class 4 use, those limits could be taken off, so that if it was an office development and somebody was working late where you've got a car, which I don't think would cause a noise nuisance or anything, you could say, right, we'll have that, but if it was somebody manufacturing a shed or something where they're cutting steel, heavy industrial noise, could you implement that, or is that something that would be deemed onerous or awkward to implement?
David.
Again, I've just got to reiterate the planning authority has to determine the application that's been submitted. They've applied for a Class 5 general industrial use. If it were an hours of operation condition to be applied and it then became a Class 4 use, which you then, it's like a known return valve basically. Once you've gone through to that use, you can't go back to 5 without further permission. In the event that there was a condition attached and that was proving onerous for the Class 4 use, then they could apply to have that condition removed. But again, it's hypothetical. What we have before us is a Class 5 use. If members feel that condition 12 isn't sufficient in terms of noise, as with last month, it is open to you to consider adding on hours of operational condition just to restrict those. But obviously, the same comments we made last month would be applicable here.
Thanks very much. I'm just a bit mystified about something in here, because at 1.2 it refers to ground as level agricultural land. Yet at 1.3 it's in the it's down as allocated business and industry site. So what is it? Is it agricultural land? Because then my understanding different things kick in.
Yes, it is existing agricultural land. In the LDP, it has been allocated as business industrial use.
So is that potential business use?
Yes,
if it's currently land,
it's identified
land,
for that purpose in the plan.
Alistair.
Chair, as far as I'm concerned, what Councillor McCaughrery has suggested is competent and sensible, and I have no compunction whatsoever in seconding that if necessary.
Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It occurs to me that it sounds as if, and there are already office-based businesses interested in the units, that any time conditions could be made in such a way that it benefited office-based. So if somebody wants to work up till 7 o'clock in an office, you can make it slightly later in the evening, because you don't want to inhibit the potential of loss of business to the developer of the unit from predominantly office-based businesses. So I would suggest if we're going to impose any times on it, that it takes account of the fact somebody might want to work late in an office.
I think it's already been explained. It could apply to get the hours altered.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify with the officer about the claim that was made with respect to the development plan in 1993 and now. Has there been any material change in terms of what this land has been allocated for with respect to what could happen on it between then and now?
Chair, unfortunately I can't answer that question because I wasn't covering the Nithsdale area at the time that would presumably been one of the Dumfries local plans was in force. But you obviously have to determine the application that under the LDP that is in force at the time. That's the one that was approved in September 2014, and it clearly is identified for business and industrial land, and the sort of level of restrictions which was referred to, they're certainly not applicable in this current plan under the policies that we would have. That said, there obviously is need for mitigation to make sure that there's sufficient distance between them, there's landscaping to provide separation. And as I said earlier, we've suggested condition 12 if members would rather have an hours of operation condition as well or instead, that's entirely up to yourselves.
Jim?
My view, Chairman, for what it's worth, is that it would be really challenging to try and encourage a new business into the place and say that we only work half the week because you're placing time restraints on it, and I don't think that's suitable and appropriate for a new development. Something that I wouldn't support. I'd much rather see the operation going ahead without constraints.
Andy?
Just to agree with Councillor Dempster there, and I'm happy to move that we actually go with the recommendations.
Right, another one. I got them down, do you? Lucy? Oh, sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, just to get the final and clearest advice from planning officers here, but I think anything that impedes flexibility for modern businesses to work should be resisted so that we're open for business. I think the issue that has become clear is the potential unknown nature of what a Class 5 may entail, although the details aren't there. And obviously the amenity or loss of amenity to nearby housing and the residents who are there is the issue. I'm sure that residents wouldn't mind people working at 9 o'clock at night if it wasn't going to be that noisy. Obviously we've got a noise condition that we're trying to put in place, but if we're being told that we can't change this to a Class 4, which would naturally limit that. A Class 5 would have to go through, and then it would have to be dropped down a level to a Class 4 if it was proven too onerous. Are we being told here that the only thing to do is either reject this application as it stands, or approve it with a very complex and probably unenforceable condition, or can we agree to limit it to a Class 4?
You can't determine an application that isn't before you, and the application is for a general industrial Class 5 unit. So if members feel it is inappropriate to have a general industrial use on an allocated business and industrial piece of land in the LDP, the only way you can mitigate against that would be to attach either noise conditions, which is what we are recommending, or hours of operation ones. But the hours of operation has, as you just set out, has some instinctive problems with it, which is that if anybody's actually in the building and just doing paperwork at 7 at night and it's gone beyond the hours of operation, technically that's a breach.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. I think we've maybe to a certain extent, although the applicant has suggested that he has had approaches from office workers, my concern is that this is a development that is flexible and it could finish up as a single-use heavy machinery type unit. And I think we've got to have conditions that they restrict that sort of thing happening. As you say, you can't stop them using it for that, but the conditions must restrict their hours of operation, I would suggest. Regard the paragraph 5, with no development or respect this plan permission, it's regarding detailed new tree and shrub planting. Will this cover the suds part of the estate as well?
It'll cover the area which is in the red line that you see there, so no, it wouldn't. But there's a separate application for that. We could only attach conditions that are within the red line boundary.
Thanks, Chairman. A few of the points that I was going to raise have been picked up with others, but I think it is important to look at our number one priority for the council, which is building the local economy. This takes both the local economy and the regional economy, I think, when it comes to our priorities as a council. But I think both sides of the story have to be listened to and have to do the best we possibly can. This is a Class 5 use that's been applied for, so we either grant it or refuse it, I think, is the advice is what we're being given. I would rather see that it's conditioned in such a way. We've done it in the past, whether it's through screening, noise abatement, conditions that reduce the noise and such like, because this is about environmental and amenity issues for the local residents. Completely agree with that, because business and residential, like oil and water, they do not mix. But there is options for screening and noise abatement that we can actually put in it, and conditions as well. The Class 5 use, I think, whether it's 4 or 5, we've heard from the applicant, it might not make that much difference because of the particular type of applicant at this moment in time. But I still think it's really about protecting the residents from that potential noise and that environmental amenity issue that may well arise. So I'd rather see it, my personal view for what it is, I don't think it's got to be a meeting of minds today, that I would support the application to be approved, but subject to an appropriate level of conditions that actually secure that amenity, the safe amenity for the local residents. And whether we can get that ironed out today or defer for a month and get a clear understanding of what these conditions would look like, and so on and so forth. Certainly open-minded when it comes to that, but I think both sides need to be protected. Council are very, very aware of the local residents, especially at this time the council, and as it runs into the end of its natural cycle. But it would look at it anyways, whether that's the case or not, and certainly number one priority for the council is building a local economy, and this type of application ticks that box perfectly.
About number 12 there about the noise, it's 5 decibel, the nearest noise to sensitive properties. Are you suggesting that goes lower?
I'm not, because I am an expert when it comes to what 5 dB is. I mean,
it's quite low.
It's extremely low. I know working on plant and machinery and such like as a standard around about 95, I think. But I'm not a professional when it comes to that. So but the screening, the potential screening and that type of thing, what it looks like, any noise abatement or noise screening that could be put in place. But that at least we're getting a chance to relook and maybe satisfy both sides to a degree. But I wouldn't like to see it refused when the state of Dumfries and Galloway's economy actually is at this moment in time.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think we start putting restrictions on here, and it seems fairly evident to me that the type of business that will go in here. I think item 12 has got to cover it. I'll second Councillor Ferguson.
Right, Tom. Yeah, I think if anybody does, an office goes in there and drops to class 4, they can always apply to get the hours changed.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean,
right,
I think we're getting overly complicated here. What I moved was, we grant this with all the existing conditions plus an extra condition regarding the operating hours. It's already been explained by the planning officers, if it ends up being an office development, the developer can come back and ask for a change in the hours, right? But we're all accepting that. Now that's a simple way, rather than complicating things by trying to change it into 4, which you can't. We've got an application before us, I've moved we grant it, plus one additional thing, and that is operating hours. Simple.
David.
Chair, could I ask Councillor McCaughey, could you tell me the days and hours that you're proposing in terms of operation, just so I can note that?
I would suggest pretty standard what we usually do. It's usually is it 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 1 on a 3 on a Saturday, and 7 till 12 on a Sunday. I think there's usually a standard set hours there. I should have looked them up before I came. They're pretty set for a whole host of operations elsewhere across the region.
Alice?
I would second that, sir.
I was just to say that I think I had seconded that.
No, you had. Jim?
Can I just ask the planning officer if such a thing's enforceable, because we're always encouraged to ensure that any conditions we place are enforceable. Personally, I think it's unreasonable, never mind enforceable, but we need to be sure any conditions we apply are actually enforceable and are not just fictitious.
Right, we just say maybe go in circles.
I was just going to say, if we do approve that today, we do have planning enforcement officers that can enforce it.
We've got a proposal and we've got an amendment. You read them out, please.
A motion put forward by Councillor McCaughey, and it's been seconded by Councillor Geddes to approve the application subject to the conditions and with an additional condition placing a restriction on the operating hours. It's been suggested Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. and on a Saturday from 7 a.m. till 1 p.m. and a Sunday till 7 a.m. till 12. And an amendment by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Dick to go with the recommendations as per the report.
It's for Andy.
Just a point in order here, Chair. I think I actually proposed first and Councillor Dick seconded before Councillor McCaughey came in. So the point, it's a technical point. So the motion should be what I proposed and the amendment what Tom proposed.
No. Aye. Aye. According to the clerk, it's right enough, Andy. According to the clerk, it's right enough.
Through you, Chair, Councillor Geddes came in twice, in actual fact, and seconded. Okay, so the motion put forward by Councillor McCaughey and seconded by Councillor Geddes is to approve the application subject to conditions, but with an additional condition placing a restriction on the operating hours, which have been suggested 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. till 1 p.m. on a Saturday, and 7 a.m. till 12 on a Sunday. And then the amendment is by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Dick to go with the recommendations as per the report. We'll proceed to the vote, through you, Chair.
Vote. Proceed to the vote.
Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Blake.
Motion.
Councillor Crothers.
Amendment.
Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Geddes.
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
Motion.
Councillor McComb.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Ogilvie. Not here. Councillor Stein. Councillor Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Witt.
Amendment.
And would the chair like to exercise this casting vote because we have 9?
Motion. Let's go with the original.
Motion. And I can confirm that the motion carries, that the application will be approved subject to conditions, with that additional condition placing restrictions on the operating hours.
Okay. Can we now go on to item 8, a vacant barn to the rear of the Town Hall, St Johnstown of Dalry, 16/1180/FUL. And we've got Judith speaking of this one. So whenever you're ready.
How does it work? No, that's not it. Sorry about that. It's technology. Yes, thank you, Chair. The application is for the change of use of barn in Dalry to one-bedroom dwelling house and the erection of a domestic garage. This is the location plan. The application is in the settlement boundary and includes part of a traditional barn and the associated land to the west. The site's in a designated archaeological zone, and there's a moat to the north, which you'll see in the images coming up. A core path, which is part of the Southern Upland Way, runs along the northern boundary of the site. Getting the hang of it. Oh, no, I'm not. Stuck again. Yeah. Yeah, right. Moving on. The block plan is in the middle of the image. It shows the application site and the part of the barn that's included in the site. You can see the adjoining part to the right-hand side. I'm afraid the site it's not very particularly clear, but the part of the barn that is for conversion is to the north, and the building near the middle of the site is the proposed garage. There's a track between the two buildings. You can see a track running along the site. That's a mutually shared access with the owners of the adjoining building, and that arrangement will be retained if the application is approved. A fence is proposed along the mutual boundary, and in the absence of any details for that at the moment, a condition is recommended requiring these details to be approved. Moving on to the elevations and plan of the garage. The garage is 10 metres by 6 metres and will be finished with natural stone walls and slate roof, and there's a parking and turning area proposed in front of the garage. Moving on. This is the existing elevations and plan of the barn. The front elevation as existing on the top left. You can see the adjoining part of the building with the higher roof. If the plan at the bottom shows the two stores, that is the split of the existing part of the building. This building too has a natural stone walls and a slate roof. These are the proposed elevations and plan. The proposal involves raising the wall heads a bit to about 450 mm to provide internal headroom inside, and the proposed finishes would be to match with timber doors and windows. Moving on to the images, this is taken from the A713, looking along the lane which the core path also runs along into Dalry, and I've marked the part of the building which forms the application. This is just into the lane, looking along. The mound that's covered in bracken on the right-hand side is the moat, and on the left-hand side of the image is the end of the building forming part of the application. This is just moving along the lane. There's the building there, the part with the lower roof, the access to one of the stores, the door on the gable end. And this is just looking along the boundary to the other part of the building and the town hall, which kind of adjoins in the corner. There's kind of mutual corner in there at the very back. This is a view across the front of the building and along the access, the shared access, which is marked out. I've indicated where the part of the building is, and that's looking over towards the church, which is a B-listed building. This is along the northern boundary, looking down the core path towards the Water of Ken. Could be a bit better contrast. This is taken from on top of the moat, looking towards the site. That's really most of the site, apart from a small corner on the right-hand side, which kind of slopes down to the boundary. But you can see the building for conversion, it's the one with the green door, and the other part with the higher roof. And most of the garden ground is shown. This is the view along the western boundary, showing it sloping down. And I've just got to skip that one because there's an error in it. And this is the view looking over the western end of the site towards the church. And the final slide is just another one showing the building. And in conclusion, the proposal is considered to be in accordance with the development plan and is recommended for approval, subject to conditions as detailed.
Thank you, Judith. Members, points of clarification. Ian?
Thank you. I appreciate this is only an application for a one-bedroom dwelling house. Is there any reason why there's no consideration given to developer contributions for education?
Well, one of the Chair, one of the exemptions is a single bedroom property.
Patsy?
Could I just have clarification of what we're actually doing? You said it was just the green, the building with the green doors that. And our archaeologist was slightly concerned that you weren't asking for the traditional openings to be to remain as part of the development. But I mean, there's only one there that looks like a traditional opening. Is there anything else that we should be concerned about?
Judith?
Thank you. There are two openings at the moment, the one with the green door and the one on the gable end, that as you walk along the lane, they're very restrictive really, and I think that particularly the green one, it's a metal door, and the roof has been raised, so the roof doesn't actually meet the top of the door. So there's a gap of about 1.5 feet in there. So the building has been mucked around a bit and altered over the years. So that's why we weren't too concerned about about existing openings.
Thank
you. Yeah, that's the gable end one.
Any other members?
The building with a red door, is that not included in this development? Is that going to be the garage? There's a garage at another building that's going to be erected?
No, that part of the building with the higher roof is not in the applicant's ownership, and the garage is round about the concrete slab plinth you can see along the left-hand side of that image there. That's where the garages would be new, and that's the approximate location of it.
Jim?
Chair, is it just, given the length of discussion we had on the last agenda item, land use conflict, noise at our 5 metre distance, are there any mitigation measures we can put in? Because it would be a shame if we managed to bring functions to an end because the new occupier of that property didn't like noise at night.
I had a look at other residential properties, and although I think 5 metres is closer than any, I felt there were other residential properties who would also be affected similarly by noise. So I didn't think that this one would be any closer of particular concern over other ones. That was the judgment I made.
David?
The other thing to point out is on the opposite side of the building that you're seeing there is a solid wall, and it would remain a solid wall with no openings in it, and that would be the side that faces onto the hall. So that there's a natural noise insulation there.
Thank you. Jim? Jane?
Could we possibly go back a couple of slides and just look the issue that Patsy's raised and has been raised by the consultees with respect to the design of that opening? Please. In the past, I think we might have expected, presumably where the windows are, that's where the green on the... I mean, I think that we would probably have been advised that the whole opening should remain and look a dark opening as to what it was, because what we've created actually is just a cottage. You know, you'd never have any idea about what it was. I think the point that was made was actually very valid. And I'm quite surprised that we've let that go, because it's changed. Our effort has been to maintain what the buildings actually originally looked like, and the design there is absolutely away from what that building was for.
I imagine that's something that we could cover by condition for those particular two windows. Would that, if that's acceptable?
Chair, if it's of assistance, can you go back another slide just to the existing building? Oh, that's going to kill it. No, it takes 2 seconds and it's done.
Shut it down, Judy. Shut it down. It'll do it again.
There you go, job done. You have to click on the P, PowerPoint sign at the bottom. Click on the PowerPoint logo at the bottom to bring it back into PowerPoint. Right. Right, if you go back a slide from that, or well, wherever the plan was that showed the existing. I think where you're seeing on the top left there, that's showing the existing openings. Given that it's going to be a one-bedroom property, it's going to be quite challenging to retain that opening and the other opening on the gable elevation and make a meaningful dwelling house. whilst I totally agree with what you're saying, in most circumstances you would look to retain that. The building is so small and the existing green opening is so large. I think in those circumstances there, it's going to be very, very challenging to actually come up with something. On a larger steading, definitely, but with this one here, it would negate its ability to have a meaningful space, I would suggest.
Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief one. Paragraph 1.1 says that one of the reasons that this is coming here before us because of the objection of Dalry Community Council. And if you look at paragraph 3, they're not mentioned in the representation other than the dialogue underneath. The nearest to it is Dalry Town Hall Management Committee. There seems to be a conflict there.
The bottom of page 50, consultations, there are statutory consultees, so Dalry Community Council objection is noted at 2.1.
Right, have we got nothing else for Judith? Members are now in session, Archie.
Okay, let's go with the recommendations.
Seconded.
In relation to item 8, members have agreed to go with the recommendations, which is to approve subject to conditions.
Thank you, Lucy. Could we go to item 9 on the agenda, land north-east of Boreland Cottage, Dunragit. Planned application for the formation of a quarry, installation of processing concrete and batching plant, formation of access and associated works, 16/P/1/0079, and we've got Andrew speaking on this one. So whenever you're ready, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the planning application is for a new sand and gravel quarry, and the proposed site, which is highlighted in red, is situated between Dunragit and Glenluce in close proximity to the A75. And the northwest boundary of the site is actually bounded by the Stranraer-Kilmarnock railway line. This proposed site plan shows the site and its surrounding transport networks. So you've got the A75 to the south and a classified road followed by an unclassified road where proposed access to the site would occur, and also the railway line along the northwestern boundary. This is just a photograph of the site from the nearest neighbouring property, which is Boreland Cottage. The site is actually to the left, where the trees are on the left-hand side. There's actually some visuals towards the end of the PowerPoint slides for you to get a better idea of how the proposal will sit within the landscape. Paragraphs 1.8 to 1.11 of the report explains that there's 4 extraction phases proposed, followed by a restoration phase. So the first phase, which is shown here, extraction would take place in an easterly direction along the southern part of the site. Along the southern boundary of the site, I'll just point out there's an archaeological feature in the form of the former railway line, which is a designated archaeological. Well, it's an undesignated archaeological feature, but it's recognised. But there's more information of that within the report. The second phase will then go in a northerly direction along the eastern boundary before turning west along the northern part of the site, which is actually the highest part of the site because land levels generally go from north to south on this site. So they'll go westerly. And then phase 3 will then go in a southerly direction, with parts of the upper parts of the site will then start restoration, which you can see in green, and then to phase 4, which will then continue down. Unfortunately, on that slide, it doesn't really show, but it is the top part of that site will then actually be restored as the extraction is going down, so it should be green. It seems to be a bit yellow on there, but it is actually planting that's proposed there. And this is the restoration proposal, which is actually to predominantly the site would be back to low-level agriculture suitable for pasture, and then nature conservation habitats is proposed in the western part there, and then there's various tree planting as well. These show the cross sections of the site. So the top 2 are north to south, and the top line is the existing land levels, and the green line will be the restored slope. So it just gives an idea of the level of extraction that would take place. And the bottom cross section is from west to east. These are just the proposed elevations of outbuildings within the site, effectively associated, so the office and canteen, and then the machinery as well. And the concrete plant would actually be the tallest structure at 9 metres, which would be situated in the southern part of the site in phase 1. As part of the proposal, it's proposed to improve the existing access as illustrated on this plan, and the council's roads officers are happy that that can be formed in accordance with their standards. This shows the site in relation to the landscape designations. So it's predominantly situated within the upland fringe landscape character, and the southern part is situated in the coastal flats as the site bottoms out, and then where the land levels go flat. In terms of visibility, this shows within a 5 kilometre radius has been used to demonstrate visual impact. So most of it will be contained within 2 kilometres of the site, and from the north and south, which is illustrated there, you'll probably see that this map actually shows the old route of the old A75, but you can just about see where the straight line is actually the route of the new A75. There's various viewpoint locations that have been submitted with this, and which I've included in the slides. So this one is really just an existing image. So the top one is looking to the north as you go into the landscape character 16, and the bottom one is looking towards the coastal flats landscape character. So you can see how the land levels drop down. Viewpoint 2, this one actually shows more how you'll appear, how the extraction phase will appear. So the green represents seeded topsoil, so that's the restored areas. The red is representing visible working areas for extraction. So this is actually the end of phase 2, which is coming to the top of the slope. And this is towards the end of phase 4, so you can see the top slope being restored, and areas where the red area is still working areas as extraction comes down the slope. And then this is how it would appear as at restoration. So the bottom, you can see the existing view on the top and the restored view on the bottom. This is taken from Glenluce Abbey, which an assessment on this feature has been assessed in the archaeological section of the report, and this is the only time you would actually see any extraction within on this, and there's actually proposed to be a bund at the top of the northern part of the site to actually screen workings as much as possible from this viewpoint. And then this is the end of phase 4, so you wouldn't be able to see any extraction from this phase. And these are just various viewpoints from the surrounding locality. So this is looking southwest towards the site from local road network. And this is this is where the junction is, the A75. So that's the site zoomed in. That's the slope that would be where extraction would take place. This is taken from the entrance of the golf club on the old A75. And this is taken from within the golf course, looking towards the site. And the final viewpoint is actually taken further away within the special protection area in SSSI to the south of the site. So after undertaking assessment of the application, it's considered that all potential adverse impacts have been mitigated against, and the proposed quarry would be acceptable, subject to completion of a planning obligation for ensuring restoration of the site, and conditions.
Thank you. Members, points of clarification. Ian?
Thanks. Just on the restoration there, is there any necessity for a restoration bond to be in place?
One A.
Yes,
page
part
84. Sorry, sorry. Thought it was on Alistair. Aye. I've got a bad throat myself, so. Stephen?
Yeah, it's just a hot topic, but I'm just thinking about developer contributions. I don't know about the timing of when this was actually submitted, but obviously a restoration bond is slightly different to what we're kind of trying to get to in developer contributions. That doesn't feature in here at all. Is there a reason for that?
Andrew?
There's no requirement for this scheme hasn't seen the need for any contributions in terms of infrastructure. The local road network can accommodate the proposal, and they're proposing to upgrade the access. But in terms of other developer contributions, there isn't a requirement for this type of development as of yet. To the contributions such as education, I'm presuming that you're.
I think it's more the wider impact on infrastructure, which includes education, obviously, but have we got a kind of formula for that yet?
Not for this particular type of development, no.
Chair, if it helps, policy OP3 in the local development plan sets out developer contributions, which lists affordable housing, open space and green networks, leisure, recreation and tourist infrastructure, education, community facilities, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't actually specifically identify this type of development as the sort of thing that requires a developer contribution.
Yeah, Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Through you, sir, to Andrew. I'm correct in saying, Andrew, that were this application to be granted, and the natural course of events, the existing quarries at Clay Shant and Whitecrook would cease, and that all this type of work will be located in this particular site.
That is the intention. The current reserves at those sites that you referred to are nearing their end of the life. It's estimated within the next 3 to 5 years. So this site is intended to be a replacement of that to ensure that there's enough reserves going forward in the locality to supply the local construction market.
Grateful for the response, Chair.
No. No, now in session. Archie?
Agree the recommendations, Chair?
And in relation to item 9, members have agreed the recommendation as per the report, which is approved subject to A, the successful completion of Section 75 planning obligation within 6 months of the date of the decision, or such other reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer, and B, conditions.
Right. Item 10 on the agenda, Chapelhill Farm, Waterbeck, planning application for the erection of a dwelling house and installation of a septic tank and soakaway, 16/1751/FUL. Got Lindsay Cameron speaking on this one. Just whenever you're ready, Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. This first slide is location plan, which shows the application site located roughly in the centre of the slide. The application relates to land at Chapelhill Farm, which is located approximately 3.7 kilometres east of Waterbeck, which can be seen just towards the middle at the left-hand side of the slide. This first photograph has been taken from the public road on the approach to the site from the west. The application site is situated in the corner of an agricultural field adjacent to the C63A public road and the farm access track, and it's located approximately 1.1 kilometres from Chapelhill Farm, Steading. Moving to a position just east of the farm access, this photo looks back in a westerly direction across the application site. This photograph is taken from the farm access track and looks back across the application site. Travelling further along the farm access track, this photo is taken on the approach to the farm Steading, showing it within its landscape setting. And moving into the farmsteading, there's a range of modern farm agricultural buildings to the right-hand side. And in the left-hand part of the farmsteading is the farmhouse and a range of traditional stone-built steading buildings. This is a long-distance view, but shows the farmhouse and its steading within its landscape setting. And this final photograph, again, is a long-range view, which shows the location of the application site in relation to the operational centre of the farm at the farmsteading. These two plans show the location of the application site in relation to the farmsteading and land holding. The farmsteading is located towards the northern end of the holding, whereas the application site is on the southern edge, overlooking the public road and land out with the control of the applicant. The area shaded green on the smaller of the two plans is that which is subject to a possible sale and therefore excluded from the labour requirement calculation. This is the proposed site plan for the development. The dwelling is orientated to face south over the public road and the land beyond, and access would be taken from the farm access road with an integral garage to the rear of the dwelling. These are the proposed elevations, and this is the proposed floor plan. Overall, the proposal is considered contrary to the Council's policy on housing in the countryside as contained in LDP Policy H3, and therefore the application is recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report.
Okay, members, any points of clarification, Archie?
Yeah, Chair, there's a couple of matters within the report I'd like to just clarify with a couple of things. I mean, there's obviously the labour report from the university, but there's also an issue here that says that the individual has actually put his notice in to quit the building. My understanding is that the landlord of his particular house that he's actually staying in has told him he's getting out because he wants to sell the building. So there's a little bit of material information there that may be wrong within the report. I've actually seen the land in this particular area, and the photographs don't do it justice. Very similar to the Stonehouses one in near Gretna. I think, Chair, for my benefit and hopefully for others, that perhaps in this case a site visit would actually be appropriate, because I don't think the size of the illustrations and the photographs actually demonstrate the actual land itself. So I would be proposing a site visit on this particular one, Chair.
Andy.
Thanks. Can you just go back a couple of slides, please? The one from it showed the topography and the hills. That there. So Chapelhill Farm, you've got a hill between there and the application site, and all that ground from there, is that where the stock and everything are being kept? It's on the right-hand side towards the application site. So how, I would ask the question, is how are the people supposed to guard their stock beside a road if they can't see it? Was that taken into consideration?
In relation to how the house would overlook the fields, is that? Yes, that is taken into consideration because the house actually faces south over land out with the control of the applicant and the land rises behind the house. It actually gives very little overlooking of the stocking areas that belong to Chapelhill Farm.
Yeah, the point of that, though, of course, is there are only windows facing one way, but there aren't in this house. They're facing both ways, always. So I think the point I'm trying to make here, and I take Archie's point of view, because we need to see this, because it's no practical to actually preserve your own stock beside a road when we're still in the borderlands there. You know, this is cattle rustling, sheep rustling land. It could just as easily be in the back of a trailer and gone, and the folk would have a clue where it was going.
Right, Archie proposed that we have a site visit. Has he got a seconder for that? You second that, Andy? Anyway, anybody otherwise minded? Right.
And in relation to item 10, members have agreed to go on a site visit.
Item 11 on the agenda is for noting Riverside, Steading, Beattock, Moffat application for the planning permission principle for erection of holiday chalet. Anything to say about that, David? No. Number 12, same land at Stapleton Grange, an application for residential planning permission in principle for residential development. That's noting as well. Noting Corse Hill, Duchrae Farm, Dalry, plan application for the erection of a 70-metre high anemometer mast with a 3.5 wind vane for a temporary period of 3 years retrospective. And that was for noting. Number 14 for noting Kilfillan, Holdens, Glenluce, Newton Stewart, plan application for the erection of an agricultural building. That's for noting as well. But David, you want to say something?
I think that's one of the worst notifications we've ever had overturned. That's built right across in front of a house. And I ken we've got nothing to do with views and whatnot, but that's an absolute disgrace. I think we should appeal that plan, that decision, Chair. We'll let you do that.